So without further ado, Marco Damiani.
Thank you, Shauna. Good morning, everybody. How's your morning so far? You good? Good. Mine's awesome. It's been a great morning so far. Some of us got here at 7 o'clock. We rehearsed the hell out of that song, and I think it sounded pretty good, actually. So, anyway, let's hear it for our MCs. This Academy Award stuff's kind of working. I really love it. Really talented. So, this is our second summit. How many of you were at last year's summit? Most of you, right? Remember what Lou Raja said? Exceed expectations, don't be a chair. I hope we exceed expectations today. I hope we have already. I want to thank some people. You've heard a lot of thank yous already, but I want to thank the Leadership Summit Committee. Please stand if you're on the committee. Tremendous amount of work for many months. I especially want to thank the co-chairs, Amy West, Steve Towler, and executive producer extraordinaire Shirley Berenstein. So thank you very much. You know, together we're better, and I think one of the terrific things about these summits, now we're plural, it's two of them, is that it's not just our managers. It's important that we're all here. That's the most important reason to have this event. But there are board members here too. So board members, please stand, please. The board members here enable us to be successful. They advocate for what we do every day, and they offer leadership that's indispensable to our future. So we're also fortunate today to have some people who support this organization on a daily basis. We would be nothing if we didn't have people who every day worked in our programs, worked in administration, helped us get everything done and get supported. So if you're a direct support professional, community support professional, you work in an administrative department, and you're supporting our work, please stand. Where are you? You're here today, right? I hope. Thank you. Up there too. Thank you. You know, we can't do any of the work that we do without this entire 5,000 staff person village, so thank you. So today's theme is one of inclusion. It's one of realizing better relationships and engagement. And you can go to the next slide now, please. Thank you. And it's really critical, I think, that we realize that the inclusion of people with IDD is an essential component of what we do. It always will be. But I think it's also important, and we're pretty good at this, that we're working beyond our boundaries, beyond the borders of our programs. And we're really, when we do that, we are really enabling a social justice movement. And I think it's important to talk about the work we do in that way for a couple of key reasons. We are grounded in the civil rights era of the 1960s. And we need to remember that when you're out in the community, when you're working with each other, when you're talking to your friends on a weekend at a barbecue, that we are part of a social justice movement. That's an awesome responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering. So give yourself a round of applause for being so successful at doing that. I really appreciate it. We're also about continuous reinvention. And the continuous reinvention that we're up to, next slide please, is really about being sure that we're able to identify our pockets of excellence, we're able to replicate and scale them. There's so much great work that goes on here, but if I need to be pushing us, I think I have to. Where do we get this into bigger scale? Where do we have more impact on what we do every day? You know, Will Rogers, who was an old-fashioned humorist and actor from many years ago, once said, you can be on the right track, but if you don't keep moving, you're going to get run over. And I think it's important that AHRC do that always, not just for our organization, which is first and foremost, but for the field. We have a responsibility to really lead the field. Innovation is who we are as an organization and as a field. Think about it. Innovation and moving people out of institutions, community group homes, getting people into work, free and appropriate public education, universal design to be able to move around your communities freely. These are all innovations. We need to be sure that we're continuing to do that. That's not a sidebar activity. Often innovation is seen as something that happens off to the side. It's who we are. We need to always be thinking in new ways and figuring out how we can do more and more work. Next, please. So differences really matter, and I think difference is really the only thing we have in common. The enormous power of a diverse workforce is something we need to always optimize. It's critical that we use the tapestry of our 5,000 staff to challenge ourselves to think differently, to really listen carefully, to be sure that we are seeding the opportunities before us by listening to people and by be sure that we really do recognize that having difference, not having differences, but having difference of experience makes us a really strong organization. Next, please. So I'm not a cat person, I'm a dog person, but I couldn't find a dog in a spacesuit. So if you're a cat person, you're lucky today. If you're a dog person, not so much. But I really want to say something about today's program. We could have brought in lots of DD experts, and that wouldn't have been a bad thing. I think we have a lot of them in this room today. And we're going to talk about some of the work that we do day to day, because I think that's critically important. But I think it's critical in this world that's transforming within our field and outside of our field very rapidly, that we are open to new ways of seeing the world, that we are taking things happening outside of our gigantic IDD bubble and thinking differently about what can we be doing that helps us do an even better job, that keeps our staff more inspired, that enables us to use our resources more productively. It's critically important. So as you listen to the speakers today, I want you to think about that. You certainly be engaged with their very important story. They're terrific speakers today. But think about what is the one thing for each of these speakers that causes me to think differently and see how I can interact with my staff on Monday in a different way. It's important that we embrace a growth mindset. And I don't mean growth necessarily in adding a lot of new programs, although I think we need to do that too. A growth mindset enables us to be open to new things. If we are in a mindset that's not open to those things, we are really going to not succeed and not going to meet our goals. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting diagram. I've showed versions of this before in a number of talks and meetings over the couple of years I've been here. The middle of this Venn diagram, remember those from high school, Venn diagrams, is Ikigai. That's Japanese for purpose. And I think the key thing here is that we need to be focused on how do we get our purpose in our lives and in our organization and in the work that we do every day. Yogi Berra, I love Yogi Berra's stuff. He once said, you've got to be very careful if you don't know where you're going because you might not get there. I love that. You got to be careful if you don't know where you're going because you might not get there. And honestly, all joking aside, we can spend a lot of time and energy not focused on where we're headed. And I think as individuals, we need to know where we're headed. And you need to be working with your supervisor to be sure you're heading into a good direction for your career. But we need to do that as an organization as well. So I think at the highest level, we really want to be focusing on purpose. I don't know how many of you think you're dead center on this. I'm sure not. I'm working on it all the time to be really in a place where our purpose is something we're realizing on a regular basis. So next slide. So how do we move toward purpose? Lots of research tells us that safe beats better. And what that means is people will actually choose a safer option, whatever it might be, over something that's really better for them. Isn't that curious? I think we as humans are sometimes want to be over here in the risk-averse corner. We need to get out of that zone. We need to be out of the comfort zone and find a way to get into the growth zone. And that means navigating the fear zone. The leaders in this room, that's your responsibility. We have to get out of the comfort zone. And we are already in a lot of places. That's a good thing. But I love this simple chart because it shows the progression of getting out of the comfort zone into the growth zone and all the necessary stages that need to lead up to that. So critically important that we're active leaders in a philosophy that promotes dignity and respect for one another, and very importantly, as always, the humanity in all that we do. Next slide. So here's a really quick depiction. I love physiology. This basically tells us that when you're in the comfort zone, your activation, your arousal is kind of low and your productivity is kind of low. Maybe that's right now. Maybe you're relaxed and you're enjoying the presentation today. But on the other side, think about when you're freaked out. How productive are you? So our goal as leaders here, and your goal as someone who supports people that work for our organization, we got to find that learning zone. And that means enough arousal to pay attention and do some really terrific things. I happen to call that functional anxiety. You can call it something else. But I think it's really, by the way, we all had that over there in the room before we walked in here to sing and play, functional anxiety. But I think it kind of worked. And so we need to have a commitment to do that. So an understanding the basis of who we are as humans and how our brains and bodies work, I think that helps us understand how to move in that direction. Next slide, please. So finally, this is the summit. So I worked there in 1972 at that very mountain. That's the Italian side of the Matterhorn. Nobody ever sees that side of the Matterhorn. They see that whole, that pointy square side. But that's the Italian side of the Matterhorn. So once again, I want to welcome you to our second annual summit. I encourage you to listen and learn and engage, ask questions, have fun, and have a great day. Cheers.